have to be comfortable enough to make a fool of yourself. Hi, my name's Rebecca. I'm 27, and at the start of 2025, I moved to France. A bit of backstory. I went travelling in Australia. I met Thomas, who's French, and after travelling Australia together for a while, we decided we wanted to be together. And so I spent a year hopping from France to UK and back and forth before I moved permanently here this year. Moving to France has been quite difficult with different visa options and since Brexit, but that is a story for another day. This is going to be about language acquisition and learning French, basically starting from zero. So my French level. Before I moved to France, I had a very basic level of French. I'd done a GCSE in French, which I was pretty good in. I got a C, I think, very average. But that was over 10 years ago. I think since then I had barely used it, if at all. I mean, I could say hello, I could say how are you, that kind of thing. But I'm talking about very key small phrases. And the key thing here is that I could not understand. So I could maybe speak hello, how are you, but I could not understand what anyone was saying back to me, which is a super key point of like learning and obviously like talking with someone. If you can't understand what they're saying back, there's no conversation. I would say on the scale, I was A1, potentially below. So where am I now? So I've been in France 10 months. I now have officially through like an examination, I am a level B1. I'm not a professional. I'm still learning. I say I'm a B1. It fluctuates. So some days I still really struggle, but that's just the nature of like learning a language. You're going to have days where you feel better about things and some things you're stronger in. So say like I'm stronger in speaking than writing. That's something I'll get onto later. But so officially I have a level B1. So I've gone from A1, A2, and now I'm B1. More importantly than the level, I can now understand what people are saying to me to be able to speak back. I can hold a conversation. So I think that's the most important thing out of this. So I've gone from not being able to understand what people are saying to now understand and respond immediately. So not just understand what someone's saying, translate it in my head, and then reply. I can now reply as if I was replying to someone in English. So the how. There's a few different things that I want to go over here. So number one, I lived in France. So I'm living here now. Language learning, of course, it's going to be easier if you're in the country of the language that you're learning. However, it's not necessary. You can do these things that helped me to learn the language by not being in the country. One thing I use every single day, and I would say gets a lot of stick and gets talked about a lot in like a jokey way, but actually I've found incredibly useful, is Duolingo. Caveat, it's not going to make you fluent, but it is useful in learning words. So, of course, to speak another language, you need to be able to utilize a large number of words. I would say people don't like it because it's repetitive, but I would argue that that's one of the strongest parts of the app, is that it is repetitive, because to be able to learn something you need to repeat. So yes, it's quite boring and it is repetitive, but it's bite-sized chunks, very small, very simple, that allow you to repeat and ingrain words in your head. But I would not say that using it alone is going to help you to learn. I think it needs to be used alongside other things. So what are the other things? Social media. So TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, Facebook, I don't know, whatever the thing is that you go in and you doom scroll in, utilize it. So I flooded my Instagram with French. So I followed different social media accounts that I found interesting or funny, and I flooded my feed with French. I also did the same, but with bilingual. So I have a couple of bilingual accounts that I follow, which I find really funny, because for a long time I spoke Franglish. So it's like a mix of English and French, and understanding the two and switching between the two. So I would say flood your social media. it just allows you to see the language and you're not actively searching for it, and it's not just things that are boring, like a lesson about a cat and a dog. It's like real life scenarios, short clips. Again, repetitive, just flooding your reality with the language as it's just as useful as walking into a shop and talking to someone in French because you're just hearing the language. Okay, next up, people. Find yourself a person. I have a person, Thomas. Useful, very useful. But a person, a friend, a partner, a husband, someone else who wants to learn a language. Language exchange online, language exchange in person. Find yourself someone who you can make mistakes around. Super important. You have to be comfortable enough to make a fool of yourself. Because when you're learning a language, the biggest hurdle I found was failing. I had to be able to make mistakes to get better. And sometimes they were really horrible and really cringy and not very nice. Phone calls for me took a really long time to answer. I did my first phone call and I cried afterwards because it was horrendous. But yeah, find someone you can make mistakes with, find someone you can try and have a conversation with. It doesn't have to be a very long one, it doesn't have to be all the time, but find someone potentially once or twice a week. I don't know, it depends on your schedule, but just try and find a little bit of time to speak in French. Me and Thomas, we traditionally spoke in just English, and I made a point of every time he replied to me in English saying, no, you need to speak to me in French, so that I could start learning it with someone that I was comfortable with. Okay, so next up, again, media. TV and literature. I'm going to say, underline that one, literature. So TV to start with. Think of your language learning. So my level of language was toddler level when I started. So you cannot go out and expect to be able to watch just anything and completely understand it. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't, but hear me out. Start small. I started by going on YouTube and finding the French Peppa Pig. And God, that show's boring. But I knew that it was very simple, repetitive, small, bite-sized amounts of the level of language that I could understand. So I would watch Peppa Pig on YouTube. I did this for a couple of months, not exclusively. I then also added in my favourite shows. So I would watch New Girl, dubbed. I hate dubbed, but it is what it is. Dubbed shows of like my favourite shows from the UK, or not from the UK, but that I used to watch in English. So think, yeah, New Girl. I watched Harry Potter in French. And you could then add English subtitles if you're starting out, but don't fall into the trap of using it as a crutch. I would then, if I've watched it a couple of times, I would switch to French subtitles so that my brain's not automatically just reading what's on the screen and not listening. But again, just even absorbing that language instead of just absorbing English is really important, because a lot of the work actually happens without you thinking about it. Just hearing the language a lot will help you to understand it. And using your favourite shows is something that you've watched before, you know, the storyline of, is really helpful. Again, you could then add in other shows, traditionally French shows, not dubbed. I've got some places that you can go to, I'll list them, to find those that I used to watch in the UK before I came over to France when I was hopping between the two. So I know that you can actually get them in England. Now, literature. My weakest aspect of French right now is the writing, purely because when you write on Duolingo, or when I write emails, or when I'm like writing something for work, the easiest fail-safe thing to do is just to use Translate, or the suggested word will pop up while I'm texting. So literature is super important. It's something I'm nailing at the moment. I started with very simple children's books. I went to the library and I would read the books there. I have a couple of bilingual children's books, which are really good. Very simple, same thing as the TV. Start at the level that you're actually at and work your way up. So right now I'm reading Harry Potter the French version. Where is that? I don't have it right now. Because it's a book that I listen to in audio a lot. I watch the films a lot. I read the books a lot. So it's something I really, really know. So find your favourite, I don't know, teen book. Whenever you used to read a lot or what you read a lot, the genre that you like, make everything as easy as possible so that when you're actually reading it, that's the difficult part, not getting into the book or the storyline because you already know it. Okay, caveat, bilingual books. Very useful, but I went out and bought 3 or 4 bilingual books in London, and they're great. I think it's great. So you have one page in English and one page in French, and they're the same. They're just translated. So if you're reading through the French and you don't understand something, you can immediately switch over to the English, find it, and carry on. I think that's great. However, the books, the only ones I can find, and if you have seen modern books, please let me know where to get them from. But a lot of the ones I found are old, which means the language is older, more official, more formal, and therefore more complex. And I found that it is really difficult to understand the French because it's not very simple at all. So that's just a caveat. You could try it. Maybe you're really into the classics, which I am in English, but I find it too difficult in French. Okay, and finally, tutors, tutoring and exams. So I found that I needed a tutor. I think it's really important that you have someone that really understands what they're doing to be able to like guide you through. However, I did not have a massive budget for this because I just moved here. I spent 6 months unemployed. I spent the year before that hopping between with not secure work. So like I did not have a big budget to be able to spend on going and doing the courses at like €2,000, blah, 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 plus. What I did have though was a visa requirement. So I have to have officially a level A2 to apply for my next visa, and therefore I needed to sit an exam. At this point, I was still thinking I was A1. I was like, oh my God, this is not going to work. I'm not going to get the visa, blah, blah, blah. The world's ending. So I went out and I found a tutor. I found my tutor online. I did lessons twice a week for 8 weeks before my exam. I think that a tutor is super helpful, but I think that, again, I think there needs to be a goal in mind, because if you just get a tutor once a week without any goal, you're like, I just want to get better, I think it can become quite stagnant quite quickly. I believe that potentially finding yourself an exam, I'll try and find some, I'll list them for you, but trying to find the exam, a goal, so that you have something to work towards will actually be incredibly useful and motivating. So yeah, I took a tutor, an online tutor. I did twice a week for 8 weeks, and it greatly helped. It really did, because she set me homework. I knew I had a goal to reach. I had to get A2 for this exam for my visa. The world hung in the balance, but it pushed me to really use and utilize the time well. So even if you don't need an exam to get a visa, you don't need a certificate, maybe look at trying to find one just for the sake of motivating yourself. So maybe put aside some of that budget for actually sitting in an exam and getting a certificate, because then you have this achievement as well. It's like you train for a race and then not having the race or the medal at the end of it. And then, of course, there's practical experience. So, of course, living in the country, like living in France, so I do get automatically that access to the language. I step outside, I go to the shop, people are speaking French to me. But I do think that you can search that out and you can find it as well. You can find it in clubs. There's French clubs. There's other people out there that are in the same position you are, looking up the same videos, and they also want to learn the language. So why not try and find them? There are Facebook groups, there are online language exchanges where people want to learn English. So maybe look into something like that. And if you are living here or you've just moved here and you're trying to learn French and you're like desperately searching for this like magic thing that's going to make everything really comfortable and you're going to like learn the language and it's going to be great, it's not that easy. Going outside, yes, it's really hard when you first get here, but do it in small increments. So like go to the shop and take the small wins, and go to the boulangerie and buy yourself a croissant or a chocolatine and take the win of successfully having that transaction. And the best thing is to reward yourself with small goals rather than taking on something really big, failing, and then feeling rubbish and having to work your confidence back up again. And yeah, of course, you're going to make mistakes, but you'll find that if you try, like, people will be more than willing to help and encourage you. I find that a lot. Anytime I talk to someone and I say, "Oh, I've been here 10 months," they go, 10 months? You've been here 10 months? That's crazy. Like, your language is great. I'm like, yeah, of course, because I'm not scared of talking to you now. So half of it is confidence, half of it is just building yourself up and doing it slowly, but you'll get there. So I hope this has been useful. I just thought maybe it was a good time to put this out here, seeing as now I have a little bit more confidence in myself speaking French, and therefore I wanted to share that, and hopefully other people can use what I've talked about and gain some French experience or language learning experience themselves, and thinking potentially about making some other videos about my story about moving here and things I found difficult or easy. Yeah, we'll see what the future holds. Okay, thanks. Bye.